Hail, hail, folks. Good evening and welcome along to the Monday night show of the Endless Celts Podcast. I'm Anthony. I'm delighted to be joined, looking very resplendent tonight, Endless Celts hoodie, captain of the ship, Stephen Tomlinson. How you doing, mate?
All good, mate. All good. Had a fantastic weekend. Spent time with the kids. Spent a lot of money over the weekend, but you have to have fun. You have to live a little. And you did mention one thing. We can see we've got some hoodies made. We're not going to push it on people and be like, here, you have to buy this, you have to buy that. I just want to show a wee up close photograph of it. Ross kindly got these done for us. There's a jumper there with our logo on it, and there's also a t-shirt. The t-shirt's the prize that Stephen Coulthard's getting for winning the Super Six from last season. So that's on his way. We're delighted about that. With a few other bits and pieces maybe in and around that. And Anthony, I think you would agree with one thing with me, buddy. It's a uniform so simple in its style, isn't
it? And yet so stylish as well. It has to be said. It's absolutely looking the part, mate, as I say. And just if Stephen's if he watches in live or if he listens back at some point, it was just to let you know, Stephen, I'm responsible for picking your t-shirt up, so I shall do that at some point this week when Ross gets back his holidays, and I'll message you on Messenger, and we'll get a suitable time for me to drop it off to you at some point. So well done, and as I say, hopefully we don't have any issues with it going forward. But I don't think there's
just to address one thing, Pam was saying that merchandise is fab. Look, if anyone is interested in a t-shirt, whatever, just hit us up. And it's the same thing with if we get enough interest, we can do the bulk order and things like that, if that's something you're into. But for now, it's for the group, and we're delighted with it. Ross got it done, and we're absolutely buzzing. This comfy. This hoodie, by the way, is so comfy. So comfy.
Right. I'm looking forward to next time when I'm on, hopefully, but I'll have been up at Ross's by that point, and I'll have picked my one up, so I'll have it on for the next time. But yeah, absolutely looking forward to it. Now I've got to give you a bit of praise here, Stephen, because obviously it is the international break, which I know you're not too much of a fan of in the first place, but of course Ross is on holiday, Fanny's unavailable. I think Wally's out at a gig tonight as well, so all the other resident Scots are posted missing, but you've very soundly agreed to step in and talk about some of the good things that have happened for the Scottish national team over the weekend, because obviously folk wrote Scotland have qualified. Obviously we were disappointed to lose to Spain on Thursday night in sort of dubious circumstances that we'll kind of chat on in a little bit. But last night, due to the result over in Norway, Norway lost 2-0 to Spain, which meant that both Scotland and Spain have now automatically qualified with 2 games to play. So it's a very un-Scotland-like feel to qualification with getting there with so much time left. Regardless of anything else, it's a great achievement.
100%. I wish it was something Celtic within the Champions League group, but you have to let that go a wee bit. But it's like with anything with Scotland throughout the years. I mean, you said there, look, I make no secret, me and international football aren't the best of mates. I'll watch the tournaments and I'll have a beer and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I have been kind of watching Scotland over the course here in the qualifying campaign, and they've done fantastically well. I think that Spain was their first defeat in however many games, wasn't it? Something along them lines.
Yeah.
It was what an incredible run. And
played 5-1-5 in the run up to the Spain game, and I think that's what Steve Clarke was kind of trying to address today, because I think there was a couple of, absolutely classically in the English dominant media. Although having said that, there was absolutely no mention of it today on Simon Jordan and Jim White's show on TalkSport. Jim was
Simon White.
Simon White, yeah. You can tell it's been one of the days, eh? But
oh man,
yeah, Jim
was,
he's normally first to talk about Scotland whenever there's something negative, and yeah, the minute we've actually qualified for a tournament, he seemed more interested in talking about that Logan Paul KSI nonsense for the weekend. But what can you say? He's a little Englander, as we all know, and we know what side his bread's buttered on up here as well. But I think
that goes back to we talk about it a lot in this podcast. It's the ignorance that they have towards football up here and the quality of football that we can produce. I mean, what to forget as well, most of the players Scotland have now play in top leagues. whether it be the Premier League, the Serie A. Our captain, Callum McGregor's in the best of his game at the minute. He's playing at a very high level. And it's like, you have John McGinn, who's bossing it at Aston Villa. You have players like Lyndon Dykes, who's just a rough and ready forward. Ryan Christie was playing in the Premier League. Kieran Tierney, one of the best left-backs in the world. Andy Robertson, the Champions League winner. So I don't know how they could continue to be ignorant and continue to kind of downplay Scotland's chances. I mean, if you look at the other home nations, you look at the north of Ireland, as people like to call it, or whatever, the Republic of Ireland, both very average teams. You look at Wales, I think they've punched above their weight for many years, but that's obviously down to good organisation, which I think Steve Clarke is very good at with Scotland. And then you compare them teams, I think Scotland probably has the best squad out of them all, bar England. Do you know what I mean? It's littered with talent. I mean, the left-back position, the right-back, Aaron Hickey's had to play out of position just to get into the team. So, I mean, there's different things here. And the likes of Simon Jordan, the likes of Jim White, you know where their agendas lie. The TalkSport viewers who mainly listen don't want to hear them talk about how well Scotland done. And Jim White's going to bend over and take a shafting because he's not going to stick up for it. And he'll listen to whatever Simon Jordan's telling him. So at the end of the day, Scotland, they've done a great achievement. I think this is 2 consecutive Euro campaigns they'll be involved in, which is fantastic.
They've only ever done that once before. They qualified for Euro 92 and Euro 96, respectively. But that was it went from Andy Roxburgh was manager in 92, and he left after that, and Craig Brown took over. So Steve Clarke's actually became the first Scotland manager to qualify for 2 consecutive Euros. So a little bit of the history books there for him already. When you were saying there about the Irish side, Stephen, both the Northern Ireland and the Republic, one of the things that we're chatting about today, and you might be able to give us a little bit more insight on it. I know you're not really a fan of either of the two, but a bit closer to home. Michael O'Neill and Stephen Kenny. Obviously, Michael O'Neill had a lot of great success in his first stint as Northern Ireland manager. Do you think maybe he's realised that things have regressed quite a bit since he's had to take up the reins a second time? And obviously, as well, one of our own favoured sons, Martin O'Neill, as well, was Republic Ireland manager for a long time. He was also a guest on the show today, talking about Stephen Kenny's position now. Can you see just with the poor results that perhaps, especially for the Republic, that Stephen Kenny's position might be under threat?
I think starting with the Republic, and for anyone confused, by the way, I want to say Ireland, but we're talking about 2 separate football teams, right? So we'll have to understand that point. P. O'Neill occupied 6 counties, is right, big man, but we won't get into politics in this podcast right now. But I mean, the way I look at the Republic, Stephen Kenny came into a job with players with a lot of potential, players with young players. I think it's Corvo knows a lot about the Irish team, and he always points out different players to me when we're on the podcast. And you look through the spine of the team, like Shane Duffy, Jeff Hendrick when he was playing, the experience. I think all that's kind of dropped away now. It's all younger players coming through. And I think that was one of the plus points with Kenny, because he came up from the under-21s, I believe, promoted to the top job, and people are thinking he could fill that void by making the younger players make that step up even quicker. But for me, the Republic for many years have been playing with no identity. It's like Giovanni Trapattoni for me. It was just chaos football. You get hoofed into the box and never really playing the individual styles. Do you know what I mean? They're always thinking about the result, thinking about getting that point before they put the football in there and try and play what they're comfortable with. And I think with the personnel they have, I mean, the young keeper plays for Bazunu, went from City to Southampton. He was playing in the Premier League last season. He's a brilliant keeper. There's all different types of players in that team who I think are more possession-based football. One touch, you move it. And I don't think Stephen Kenny's playing to that. I think after this campaign's done, he'll be away. I think we're all expecting that. I think most Republic supporters, I'm not going to say I'm an avid Republic of Ireland football supporter. I'm not. I just know wee bits about them. Liam Scales has been playing recently. Maggie Johnson, according to the comments, scored tonight against Gibraltar. So he scored. So there's good signs. That's what I mean. There's good young players there. Scales, he's coming on the game. Johnson, we all know what he can produce. And it just needs that manager to kind of get that out of him. And if you look at Kenny's track record as well, he managed Dunfermline. He managed in the League of Ireland. It wasn't really, for me, an appointment that got anyone excited. Do you know what I mean? There wasn't like an appointment, wow, they're going to make a statement, they're going to do this. The thing with the North is they went back to Michael O'Neill, who was been there, done that. Essentially what we've done with Brendan Rodgers, but hopefully we experience more success than they're doing at the minute. The North and the South to me are completely identical. They're both bang average football teams that aren't really doing much. And I know sometimes you get you get into a tournament, but they end up getting slapped and they get put back out of it again. And I know with the North, they still play players like Josh McGuinness, Connor Washington, Niall McGinn. He's playing in the Irish League over here. He still gets caps. Conor McMiniman, he plays for St Mirren, but he was playing semi-professional football last year. So again, with the North, there's a lot of players who are still part-time and they're calling up in the Irish League and things like that. And the quality for me isn't quite there, which is why I said with Scotland, it's took them years to develop that type of team. Playing the Premier League, week in, week out. Billy Gilmore, what an excellent footballer. The North and South don't have them individual players with quality that can make a difference to a game. Maybe it will come in years to come, but I think that's where Scotland are a wee bit head and shoulders above the rest of the home nations.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that at the moment, mate. Obviously, Wales have had their time in the sun recently as well, and obviously they had a great result last night against Croatia, so they do still have an outside chance of qualifying. But obviously, in the last few years of the swan song of Gareth Bale's career, they've managed to qualify for a couple of Euros and a World Cup. So fair play to them as well. As I say, it's always sort of well, apart from the obvious one, I do quite like to see the home nations doing well, But
I think as well, Anthony. Sorry to cut you off there. Alistair Jack, Lenny for Ireland. Now that could be a good shout. Lenny's had a stint at club management and things like that. The thing with Lenny, regardless of what you say, you can see that he sets up his teams to play a system, and he can change it within that to play certain teams that are playing possession-based football, defend, counter, or they have to be the ones on top. I think Lenny would be great for that job. And I know Alistair Jack pointed out to me the Trapattoni get Ireland to the Euros, but I was more referencing the fact that it was the football they played to get there. It's not exciting. It's not, do you know what I mean? Everyone's trying to play this expansive football. And for me, the Republic right now have the players that do it, but Kenny's not getting the best out of them. They're a young bunch, wee bits of experience like Shane Duffy and all still in the team. And I think it's a team for me that needs an experienced coach to get the best out of them. And I don't think Kenny for me is doing that.
Yeah, that's fair play, mate. In terms of the sort of Scotland campaign, Stephen, we're not going to go over it too much. But it's just with the fact that obviously, like we were discussing earlier, 5 wins out of 5. First match it was traditionally in years gone by the kind of game that Scotland would slip up in. The home match against the bottom seed in the group, and this time it was Cyprus. But we done pretty well. We got the 3-0 win there, which was great. But I think what really kind of kick-started everyone's belief that this could be a year where they actually qualify outright without the need for a playoff or anything like that. And that was the 2-0 match against Spain. Obviously, our Willie's famously and his wife Susan are on the footage of it just as the first goal goes in from McTominay. That's absolutely brilliant. But we know that obviously Spain are a team in transition at the moment. They're maybe not the team of what they were in the 2008 to 2012 when they won the 3 tournaments successively. But you only had to look at the over the last couple of games. There's still some household names in there. They're always going to be. They're traditionally one of the big guns in European football. But to get a win like that, I know they weren't too happy about it. Afterwards, they says we don't really play football. I mean, Spaniards moaning about opposition players time wasting. I mean, you couldn't write that if you tried. But Scotland fully deserved the win that night, and Scott McTominay really did. He took the game by the scruff of the horn.
Oh, he definitely did it. And I think, like you said, with Spain, the hypocritical nature of them criticising the team for sticking to a game plan and seeing that game out. That was the game where Rodri had a hissy fit, Pedro Porro had a hissy fit. All these players were not liking the way the game was going. And I think Scotland, for the most part, were on top, from what I can remember. Scott McTominay got 2 cracking goals. Both basically was run into the box. Sacramone was inside the box, kind of feeding off the scraps. He was there at the right time. And I think with Scott McTominay, moving him out of the back three, it had to be done. He wasn't a centre half. He's a box-to-box midfielder. He's got energy for days. He's not the most skillful, but he can run. He's got a good engine. And he gets in them right areas of the pitch. He reminds me a wee bit getting into the box. Remember like Stuart Armstrong did for us, just arriving late, striking the ball, and sometimes ends up in the back of the net. To get 2 that night was fantastic for him. And also believe in one of the United games, he saved them, didn't he? Got 2 in injury time. So he has a knack of it. Like, this isn't a one-off for Scott McTominay. This is his kind of niche, what he does for the team. And you have to look around. like you said, Spain aren't household no more. It's not like Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Albi. You can rhyme off that team for days. That team's gone. Maybe Busquets is still around and players of that kind of ilk, but they're building again. Gavi, Pedri, Ansu Fati, who's on loan at Brighton. These are all young, up-and-coming superstars, and Spain will be the top dogs again sometime soon. They're not going to be down forever. I'm not saying they're down. Like you said, they're picking up results, and they're going to qualify with Scotland to go to Germany. But, I mean, as a Celtic podcast, to bring it back to Celtic for a minute, it was almost reminiscent of getting them big results in Europe, wasn't it? The crowd going wild, the support's on you, the players are all pumped up, they're getting stuck in. Porteous was getting stuck in. And by the way, just saying it, we should have signed Ryan Porteous, in my opinion.
He's someone that I think you make a point, Stephen, because obviously previously you mentioned there Aaron Hickey as well. Now, and I have to say,
Aaron Hickey,
as much as they're for as much as I would always agree that they were talented players, I think I was never ever totally convinced that they maybe would have signed in a Celtic shirt of, and obviously Hickey was on our books. He then went away to Hearts. We made a couple of bids for him, if reports are to be believed, and Hearts weren't willing to sell back, which is their gift, I suppose. But I do have to say, certainly under Steve Clarke, I think that Ryan Porteous really has come onto a game. I think he's matured. To cut out some of the nonsense that we definitely have. But when he was still playing for Hibs week in, week out, he did.
When did I say that? When did I say
at some point in the
John Suter?
I think you might have done, yeah. Like, we know SPL watch is your thing.
Well, Porteous,
I think he's really showed his versatility. He can play, like you say, on the left or on the right, and you can still feel equally comfortable with him doing both. But yeah, just going back, I was actually going to try and bring that up a little bit, just with the fact that, like you say, Scotland are perhaps a little bit ahead of their curve on, their progression, learning curve, whatever just kind of term you want to play it. And I remember Euro 2016, Scotland was the only home nation not there. It was the sort of start of this journey that we're on.
Is that France?
Are we hopeful that that was in France? Yeah. Are we hopeful, certainly, then, that not that we could learn from it, we could take a bit of inspiration from it, that, if we keep doing what we're doing, hopefully Celtic themselves can end up having the same kind of fortunes that Scotland have. Like you say, it's all about that home form, but you do have to pick up points away from home as well.
I mean, do you want me honest answer? I mean, for me, that there's Pam, keep going, San Fran, they'll get another rant out of Stephen. Like, I'm in the zen tonight, in the zen. But no, I get what you're saying. I think with Scotland, what I pointed to at the start of the podcast is their squad at the minute. It's quality, playing in the top leagues. With Celtic, I mean, the home form is one thing that I think, from our point of view, I think from every supporter and the team, is abysmal. There's no other word to describe it for me. I think it's one win in like 10 years or whatever. I know people say it's like 8 or 9 games, but still, I mean, if you transferred that back before 2010, we were beating teams, drawing with teams, no one was coming to us getting an easy victory. And like you look at the Lazio game, it's just lapses of concentration. It's just wee things, the fine margins that we all talk about. And look, I don't like saying learning, Anthony. I feel like every Champions League game,
when I was getting ready to ask the question, I thought, I'm laying them up here.
I don't like saying we're learning. It's like, how many times can you go to the doctors and take a needle in your arm and learn from the pain? It's going to be the same thing every time you go to the doctors. You're going to hate getting a needle. And it's like, Celtic year in, year out, it feels like, as I said before, we're having the same conversation. How will we do next year? This is a learning experience. Players change, management teams change, and then it's a cycle going, well, learn again for next year, players leave again. And it's like, where do you draw the line being like learning and just being a bit shit? Like, do you know what I mean? That's the honest thing here. I don't think, as I said before, we're not a Champions League club. We're a Europa League club, in my opinion. I don't think we've strengthened enough to be considered a Champions League club. Obviously, in our minds, we're the greatest club in the world, and it'll always be like that in my mind. But being realistic about it, if we're looking to challenge in Europe in some shape or form, the home form, like you said, is the staple. Scotland have built on that. They've made Hampden a fortress. And I mean, Spain going there, regardless of the personnel, you still have players who have quality. Like, so I mean, these players are playing for Barcelona, Real Madrid, all them teams in Spain. It's no easy task. They managed to beat them. And I look at Lazio, I look at Feyenoord, I'm like, again, it's like Shakhtar Donetsk, them 2 games against them. It's missed opportunities. And Look, it's ahead in the curve. It's fair enough for Scotland because they're a national team. They obviously take longer to progress and develop because you only get Steve Clark every so often. But the way I look at it is, there's no excuses for us, Celtic, not to be doing better in Europe. And I don't look. We can sit and go. The Atletico games are coming up. We'll do better. We'll pick up a point. It'll be fantastic. But at the end of the day, for me, Europe's done. I don't see us getting third place. And I'll be out with Whipper a game, and we'll be saying after the Champions League's over, do you think we'll do better next year? We'll get our group, or we're going to beat this team. We could challenge this team, and then it'll be the same outcome year in, year out. Something has to change, Anthony. And it's not me ranting, or it's not me giving off, or it's not me disagreeing with people. I take people's opinions validly, and I think you know that as well. And I want to hear yours back because I don't want you to move on to a different topic. I want to hear what you want to say back. And I think,
absolutely.
I think for me, to say we should do better shouldn't be an issue. I think we all agree we should do better. We should all agree. This team basically is the same nucleus as last season, and we all were saying they're going to learn and get better. So far, it hasn't happened. And yeah, I know it's the last minute Lazio game. Players might still have adrenaline in their system. They're emptying the box and stuff like that. But a wee bit of experience, just a wee bit of a head to go, stay where you are, clear the box, get out of danger. That's all needed to happen there. And I say naivety. I do believe it is naivety. We're not learning from mistakes, so it is naive. I don't understand any way to explain that. And it's just Celtic year in, year out. Europe for me, we're making no impact. And every year the board are saying, we want to do this, want to do that. Rodgers, when he first came in, Anthony, want to make an impact in roads in Europe again. What's the roads, by the way? Are they all closed? Are they all like, what? We're not getting through them. I don't know.
Delays. There's a few cones on it.
What do you think has to happen?
Well, I mean, I suppose, like you say, it sometimes almost sounds too simplistic when you actually, when you do say it out loud. But what the things we've often spoke about, definitely in terms of the build up every year, is, and I think Ross alluded to it well in the last podcast, was about those little building blocks. And I think, like you say, that the team itself. I mean, I was at the game against Lazio, and I mean the crowd by and large were absolutely, brilliant. But
they were fantastic.
Definitely could tell when there was, if a pass did go like a little bit astray, especially as the game was wearing on, you did sense the nervousness. And I think the players are feeding off that a bit as well, because you can, I think they're eager to get. I'm not saying we'll get 1-1 out the way and then it'll, everything will fall into place. Absolutely not.
No, I know that, man.
I do think that getting some points on the board, or like you say, trying to change those defeats perhaps into draws, or draws into victories. And I think definitely it'll be a big weight off the shoulders when they eventually do get that first win, certainly back at home. Or even, it's going to be very difficult against Atletico. We're not daft. But then again,
are we away first or home first?
No, home first. Next week, actually. So maybe the fact that we did play really well against Lazio and then we're straight back in at home, I'm hopeful that we can build on the good points from that. Having said that, Atletico are a completely different animal.
Griezmann,
yeah, absolutely. And I didn't like Griezmann's comments about Celtic at the start of the season, so I'm like, I really hope.
What did he say?
He said something along the lines of, I can't remember what the full subject matter was, but I think it was something in terms of how winning the European Cup. I don't know if it was maybe actually a diss against Man City or something, but he said winning the European Cup isn't a big thing, really. And then he says, because even Celtic have one. And
wow.
It was and I'm just like, when we actually drew them in the tournament, I thought, God, I hope somebody puts him in Rose Ed first. If Liam Scales does another one of the thunder and tackles, I'd give him a standing ovation. But yeah, the points you do make are based on, by all accounts, facts, mate, because we do have to start doing that. We do have to start.
Anthony, I think this is a good point from Strange of the Doctor. Too nice in Europe. Do you not think that? I believe when I see teams up against us,
showing some of the teams a bit too much respect. Do you think?
Too much respect. Too much respect.
Yeah, that could be a point. I think as well, though, it comes across with some of it, like we were saying, some of these mental blocks that we seem to have had. Even though, like you say, some of the times it's been different teams, different managers. But I think the longer this record goes on, the more the more it can build up and it can play on the players' minds. As I said, we know that one result's not going to change everything by and large, but I definitely hope. I mean, we spoke about that at the start of the season. What would the progress be? And I says definitely if we can get that win, get some points on the board, and if we can get to the match night 6, and it's still been in our hands to play for one way or the other, whether that be going down to Europa League or I don't know, in an ideal world you'd be trying to get through to the knockout phase of the tournament you're in. But I think we all appreciate it's always going to be difficult, but it can be frustrating sometimes when you're putting in the hard graft and not getting the rewards. But I do think that we do have to, I would be absolutely gutted. Consider, I think Ross summed it up well in the previous weeks. It's not that we're turning up in every game now and we've not had a big heavy doing off the likes of a PSG or that we had for a couple of years. It's almost like everything's going in the right direction, but we're not getting over that big hurdle of actually getting a win or being in contention on the last game. And that's what we need to do.
But here's the thing, Anthony, right? Porteous, coin wizard. Porteous has been playing incredibly well for Scotland. We all can't deny that. But I think, you say there we're putting in the graft and it's difficult. 100% is. I get that 110%. But you have to look at similar teams in our position. They're still picking up wins. They're picking up draws. They're picking up points. And teams primarily, I'm not fucking Gank, all them types of teams. It's only examples coming to mind. Noggin. I know I say it all the time. But even Porto, to a lesser extent, and all them types of clubs, we're not a million miles away from us in terms of finances, in terms of wages we can offer, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of all development and things like that. And I get that it's hard and I get we have to learn and all this type of stuff. But at the end of the day, teams are overtaking us that shouldn't be overtaking us. And that for me is bad. We always, see when I hear now, when we're joining the Champions League group, when they get an ex-player in the studio, just say it's Lenny or Petrov, the European nights at Celtic Park, they're deafening, they're so loud, that could be 9 points for Celtic. And in reality, it doesn't matter no more.
Yeah, because I think certainly for that generation, I think they are obviously playing on the, I think obviously those guys, big nights in Europe came sort of pre-Abramovich kind of era, where I do think it's, the financial, like you say, there are teams, of course, that are more in our market, but in terms of, I think that the competition felt more like a genuine competition back then, if that makes sense, in terms of course, you had your Real Madrids, your Man Uniteds, teams like that.
And this is the point.
But
top players don't want to play in SPL. That's the big issue as well, isn't it?
That's it. The TV deal now, as I always said, when you looked at that team that were brought in, £6 million back in the day got you Chris Sutton, who, yes, he had a poor season at Chelsea, but he was still a Premier League winner, a top-rated striker. Got you £6 million, got you Neil Lennon, who was a Premier League player. 3-4 million for the likes of Alan Thompson. Because of the way the TV deal now is so vastly different compared to what it was. That you used to always have United, Liverpool, Arsenal, and probably just in terms of location, the other London teams. But apart from that, Celtic and Rangers more than competed with the other. I mean, Ronald de Boer went for Barcelona to Rangers. We obviously signed a lot of big Premier League players. Tory Andrew Flo went to Rangers as well. I was going to say the two of them went as well. But what I mean by that is Celtic and Rangers were seen as in that environment. Whereas now, perfect mirror example, Brendan Rodgers left Celtic to go to Leicester City. 20 years before that, Martin O'Neill left Leicester to come to Celtic. So that just shows how it's changed. But I would say, considering that there are teams that have had better results, then that is where your point for me does stand up. I think there has been games that have, the likes of Barcelona and a PSG and stuff, you're always going to be up against it in nights like that. But there are other teams that are perhaps on their level that maybe it is too nice, maybe it is a bit too much respect, maybe it's a whole mixture there, a whole range of things. But if we can get back to at least been able to put up, get some points on the board at home, and that can marry on to the away matches as well. But I wish I had I'm sure we all do. I wish we had a magic potion to do it, but whether or not we do remains to be seen, mate. But I'm sure we'll have obviously it's next week, we're at home to Atletico, so it'd be great if we can get rid of it as of next week.
I'm saying one thing. I'm not coming on the Friday podcast. Nope. I'm not coming on the Friday podcast. Not a hope.
That night. Unless we win, of course. Unless we win.
I'll be on.
But in terms of, probably a good thing is we can bring this up as well. I'm not wanting to speak too much about the Spain-Scotland game for last week because, apart from the incident itself, it wasn't a game packed with too many flashpoints, except, I would say overall, Stephen, and it's something that we can bring into the club element as well, was not only the VAR decision, and we've seen again last night, them taking 5 minutes to decide whether or not Spain's goal counted or not. There's obviously been a massive and absolutely justifiably so negative reviews of the VAR and the way it's been used in the Scottish Domestic League, and of course the standard of Scottish referees. I mean, there is no debate to be had here. They are abysmal. The refereeing standard in Scotland's awful. But you sometimes try and I think sometimes we get so worked up in that sometimes that you don't actually see. And I've noticed that, especially in the European games now, and obviously down south there's been the massive controversies as well. Is it a case perhaps not even just that the VAR and the referees aren't great here? I think it's a lot further than that. I would argue, at least in England, they're trying to improve it. Up here, you're rewarded for your incompetency. But and even when you look at the Scotland-Spain game last week, initially they said it was for a foul. 10 minutes later, they're changing it to offside. It's little wonder why these little theories pop up, that it's just got, even if it is for offside, you can, it's debatable, as Michael Stewart said, whether or not he's interfering with play. But then again, we see it last night, 5 minutes to make a pretty simple decision. Is VAR and the referees in general just not fit for purpose across the board? And if you agree with that, is there anything you think we can do to improve it?
Sorry, my dog's going mad on the background here. But one of the worst things that come out of VAR this season is when Mike Dean, the retired referee, went on a podcast and said he didn't give the right decision to help his mate out. Mm-hmm. That for me is insane. That had an effect on a live football match, and all he thought about was protecting his friend, the referee, instead of making the right call for the better of the game. There's 1 point already that they can influence a game-making decision like that. Look, I don't know what decision it was primarily, but he said on the podcast, I can't remember what flashpoint it was or what involved, but the fact that he didn't give the right call to protect the friend, I think is absolutely insane.
Yeah,
another issue.
It was the match. It was Chelsea Tottenham last year. I don't know if you remember. It was the one where Conte and Thomas Tuchel, who had been Chelsea manager at the time, they had a bit of a spat on the touchline at full time. But I think it all came about from, is it Cucurella, who's the Chelsea fullback?
Yes, Cucurella, yeah.
Quite crazy haircut. And the VAR quite clearly seen the one of the Tottenham players just grabbing at his hair and pulling him right back, stopped him advancing with the ball. I think that player might have already been on a booking, and the VAR picked up. We watched the replay about 3 or 4 times, but the player wasn't sent off, and then I think he either was involved in the equaliser or actually scored the equaliser. I can't remember. So somebody that quite clearly, as you say, shouldn't have been on the pitch, ended up having a direct impact on the game due to Mike Dean not doing his job.
And also, I believe Mike Dean does the referee thing on Saturday Sports now. And I've seen a clip. I've seen a clip of Paul Merson. I've seen a clip of Paul Merson going through him. It looked like he was wanting to punch his face, and I don't actually blame him, to be honest. Not advocating any violence here, but he's a twat. But I mean, as well as that, you've got the multiple issues up here. Remember the whole Fir Park incident when the camera was at the dugout instead of looking at the goal, which it should have been allowed. You've got the issue, I know it's a running joke now, but Rangers having conceded a home penalty kick in about 400 years, even with VAR. Connor Goldson, the second goalkeeper. I mean, you look across Europe, the Scotland game, there was like leaked footage of the referee getting it for offside and it wasn't seen on TV cameras and things like that. And it's just, it's mind-boggling. I think to go back to Postecoglou, he said it. Technology's not ready for the game. It's not ready. We were all there to believe that things were being changed, that things would get better. And the one big issue as well for me as well, every country has different rules to VAR. It should be one rule across the board and interpreted the same. Because in Europe it's different to the SPL. SPL is different to the EPL. EPL is different to the Serie A. It should be a blanket rule across all the organisations and all the football association bodies. Then maybe you get some clarification and you get a structure to the actual development of the game. I think that referees, regardless of what we believe, when it's an on-field decision that can affect the game, we should hear the audio.
Yeah.
So there's transparency. I think the Liverpool game with the Jota, was it Jota scored the goal? Diego Jota? Or
is that just the game a couple of weeks ago? Yeah.
What do you call him? The winger. Whatever. I can't remember his name. It was a goal, but the ref forgave it for offside or something. Wasn't it something like that?
So what happened was he was onside, scored a perfectly good goal, but it was ruled offside. But it was I think there was 2 Tottenham players playing him on. But Diaz, yeah. But the VAR didn't know what it was confirming, so it said check complete, but they didn't actually know what they were confirming. So they agreed with the on-field decision that was blatantly wrong. It couldn't have been more of a farce if it tried.
There's multiple issues, like, do you know what I mean? And the fact that the communication isn't clear enough to the referee, and then it's all misconstrued. Decisions are being made that's wrong, and it's not ready. I mean, we've got the Wish version. Every other organisation has the best they can get, the equipment, the cameras, and the fancy lines. And you even look at the goal Rangers scored against the Cyprus team, Limassol. The line. Did you see the line they drew?
Yeah,
it was like diagonal. So like the VAR is not fit for purpose. The people who's run it's not fit for purpose. I think that having relationships with certain people in the referee or VAR room really makes it difficult, because like Mike Dean, he pussied out of giving the right call because he wanted to protect his mate. You shouldn't think about that when it's a football game being played. Like you said, Cucurella was on the pitch, and the fact that the game later on in the match. So there's multiple issues, and I'm pretty sure in Spain and every other league they're having it. It should be took out of the game. And yes, we would go back to the same old shit that we had, but to be fair, our game's not get any better. It's probably got worse. Like the referees have somehow got worse, and that's incredible to say. Like, you know what I mean? There's some idiot in a van outside New Douglas Park in Hamilton just watching TV screens, not knowing what he's doing, and it's baffling. And it's a bit embarrassing. And you even look at I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. I do apologise, but you even look at the FIFA Club World Cup. They're introducing a new offside rule for VAR. It's going to be tried there. And it's like, why are you not doing that across all the game? It just confuses everything. Have it all in one. Have it together. And then it's like saying the handball rule, we'll change it for this country, but do it different for that country. It doesn't make any sense. Keep it the same. And like, see all that interpretation of the game? No. If it's a rule in the game, it's either yes or no. There's no in between. There's no in between. You have to make the right call, because these games can lead to someone winning a championship, someone being relegated, losing out millions of pounds of money, all that type of stuff. So there's scenarios you have to take into consideration. The referee should be punished, and no hard web. He's not really sacking people. I know he's been doing that quite a lot recently, getting rid of people. But like you said, they get rewarded up here for being incompetent. They get cases of wine, beer, lavished upon. Do you know what I mean? Going to supporters clubs, wearing certain teams' colours. They get away with it because it's allowed.
Perfect example. A few weeks back, obviously there was the terrible call in the League Cup between Rangers and Livingston when Rangers had a perfectly it was as clear a foul as you'll ever see. But the VAR didn't get involved. Callum didn't award it on the pitch.
Was that the goal, Seema?
Yeah,
he pushed him.
Now it was so bad that you would at least even think down in England there'd be repercussions for it. Wally Collins' reward for that was to get to do the Celtic game that weekend. You know, it's need I say more?
Do you think it's fit for purpose?
No, not even remotely. I admit that I'm coming from a biased point of view because I never wanted it in the first place. I said from the start, I went, all this will do is highlight how incompetent they are, but there won't be any consequence for it. So we're seeing it, week in, week out, awful VAR decisions, but nothing's. It's not improved in the last year. We're coming up to the year anniversary of it being introduced in Scotland, and the standards haven't improved. It's the decision making. They're still not making the correct decisions on a consistent basis, and the length of time it takes to make certain decisions hasn't got any quicker either. So, we're a year down the line, and we're no better forward than you. As we say, it's been 3-4 years down in England now, and it's still the same farce. You listen to the, I listen to the game podcast, which is the journalist, the sports journalist for the Times, and every Monday the opening subject more or less is, what about that decision for VAR at the weekend? So I think it's across the board. I think Big Ange is spot on. It says this isn't a game that's fit for for the technology. And even if it was, we don't have referees at a high enough standard to implement it properly. So, but I think it's this hasn't been our first VAR rant, mate. I don't think it's going to be our last by any stretch of the imagination.
No chance, mate.
Just before we go, because I know you've got a wee kind of a wee debate on at the end, but I just thought I'd bring it back to the international bit just before we finish up, and it's just a couple of things. First of all, a wee appreciation post for Steve Clarke and the job he's doing, and I just think as well, he took over a Scotland side literally at rock bottom. That was Andy Robertson's own thoughts on it after a defeat. I think it was to Kazakhstan, before Alex McLeish was thankfully removed to the position for a second time. And we got a proper manager in there that done it at a very high level down in the Premier League. And by his own admission, he is not Jurgen Klopp in terms of charisma. He is the typical dour Scot, but he has, perhaps in a similar way to Gareth Southgate, he's made a group of talented players want to come and play for the national team. You very rarely now get these call-offs, weeks once, the minute they get called up, suddenly somebody's got a tight hamstring and anything like that, which we were used to under the likes of, the reigns of George Burley and Craig Levein, etc. Guys now, even the top players want to be in that squad every time they're called up. And although it often, football and football management, it is a lot harder than what people make it out to be, but it does do it doesn't do square pegs and round holes or anything like that. He's got a system, he's got the players, and he's made a system that fits that. With one striker, he generally floats between Lyndon Dykes or Shea Adams, depending on the opposition. You've got your Callum McGregor, that in there, Andy Robertson, Kieran Tierney, usually in. Obviously, traditionally we had Craig Gordon up until his injury last year. Angus Guns came in there and done really well. He just seems to do the simple things effectively. And when you look at from where he took over, qualified for back-to-back Euros, I'd say that we had a great qualifying campaign in the World Cup. I think just the world was against us that night. I don't think any team in the world could have stopped Ukraine that night. That was a night where those 11 players, it was, do or die for them. And it was just one of those things. We would have loved to have went to the World Cup, but it wasn't to be. But he's bounced back from that by qualifying outright. 5 wins for 5 games, and then also great quote as well, San Fran. But also as well, he's got us into the Group A selection of the Nations League. The inter-year tournament as well, that helps with qualifying positions for the qualifying campaign the year later. So by any measurable distance, he's been a success in the Scotland job. So just your thoughts on that, Stephen. But also as well, what do you think success looks like for Scotland at the tournament next year?
I mean, first of all, with Steve Clarke, I've been a fan of Steve Clarke for years, and I think I've said it before in this podcast. Before Rodgers came the first time, I actually wanted Steve Clarke in as manager because of what he was doing. I think it was West Brom at the time. He got them up to 7th place or 8th place in the English Premier League. I think that's our highest ever finish, and look at them now, they're in the Championship. But the one thing about Steve Clarke, he brings his style everywhere he goes. hard to beat on the counter. Hard to beat on the counter. We've seen it with Kilmarnock. Maybe took him a couple of months, but he made them into a good team in the SPL. They were troubling us with the plastic pits. They were troubling them as well, and they kind of bought into that. They were filling their stadium out periodically, obviously, but more fans were coming in to watch this team develop. And again, that's down to Steve Clarke. He makes the basics look simple. He breaks it down for the players. You know your role. You know what you're doing. There's no Roman 10s. There's no false 9s. There's none of this inverted wingers or inverted fullbacks. It's just straight down to basics. It's either a 5-3-2 or 3-5-2 that he usually plays with Scotland, and the players stick with it. He played that formation with Kilmarnock, and he was extremely successful. He's worked under Jose Mourinho. He's worked in different clubs. He's been brought up around cultures that play that type, and he's stuck to what he's good at. And you look at the challenge he had as well with fitting Tierney and Robertson into the team. He managed it. Do you know what I mean? Moving Hickey across, might not have been happy, but he managed it, and he's playing that role effectively. He's bringing players in like Jack Hendry, who didn't make it at Celtic, but he's making him look like a world beater on a good stage. Ryan Porteous, Grant Hanley, Cooper, all them types of players, and Billy Gilmore, the up-and-coming guy, with John McGinn, Callum McGregor. All these players love playing for Steve Clarke. I would assume he's a fantastic man manager. He's just great one-on-one. There's no bullshit. There's no hidden agenda. He just wants you to do well for the team and do well for the country. And it's quite refreshing. Like you said, I wouldn't agree with the Gareth Southgate thing, by the way. I think he's shite. I think he's absolutely crap. England, to me, they should be doing far better than they actually do. But Steve Clarke, for me, is one of them guys that looks infectious. He doesn't look like he shows it. His demeanour's always quite like... But I'd say behind closed doors that the team absolutely love him, and the coaching staff that's worked under him as well. And do you know what I mean? Fair to him. I think he deserves it. He deserved that break. And I know there was talk of him about the Celtic job, and he talked about the whole the things that come with it, his family. And look, that's respectable. He didn't want to throw his hat into the ring. That's 100%. He's doing well for the national team, and the national team are doing well for him. And I think it's a win-win situation. And like you said, he's bounced back from Ukraine, and he took the Scotland on an unbelievable run. I can't remember the record, Anthony, unbeaten. What was the run they were on?
I don't actually have that record.
17 or something, was it?
They went over a calendar year, I think, in the last one there, but without losing. And then obviously they've started this year's campaign with 5 wins out of 5. And as he said, I really enjoyed it when he said that in his comments the other night. He says it's not Spain beating Norway that's got us into the Euros. It's
Scotland.
It's the results we've had, you know. He was quite bullish about that, and I think that's one of the things that the Tartan Army are really getting behind him as well. He'll, like you say, quiet, honest, doesn't give too much away. But I think if kind of pushed in that kind of direction, he's very quick to defend his team, which I think is great.
But you look at his record in Scotland as well. Like, he wasn't short of snapping at a few journalists, like putting them in their place, putting them in their place. And you look at his coaching staff. Is it Calver? I can't remember. What's his name? The assistant.
Used to manage it, or was the assistant at
Newcastle, wasn't it? Yeah.
And Austin,
Stephen Reid.
Yeah, Austin McPhee.
Austin McPhee,
boy from Hearts as well. So there's a whole kind of eclectic mix in there. Yeah, it seems to all be working at the moment.
And exactly, and you can't really say anything about that. And as long as it keeps going that direction, that's fair. Look, Scotland are going to have blips again. They're not. Me personally, I don't think they'll be boom, boom, boom for years to come. I think they'll have those peaks and troughs. You just have to ride it out, and hopefully Steve Clarke can, because I think he wants to stay there, and I don't think Scotland can really go. Look, if you don't qualify for the next tournament, you have to go. He's made them qualify basically for 2 Euro campaigns in a row, and that's fantastic. And I mean, you asked me what success looks like. Fuck, I remember getting asked about Celtic in Europe what success looks like. Jeez, I mean, for me, top 2 qualify, don't they?
Well, and depending on how I think the best placed third teams go through as well.
Oh, it's like a playoff thing, isn't it? But I think you should take confidence from basically dominating the group with Spain in it. And really, if you get put in the group with an England or France, Germany, be confident. I don't think there's anything to be. I mean, you're taking on Spain. We talked about them not being the force, but they will get there again. So, I mean, they've got fantastic young players coming through that system. And I think Scotland should go into this tournament with no fear. they should enjoy it. Germany beer and football. You winding me up?
It's going to be a great tournament, I think.
There'll be a few divorce papers handed out when they check the finances on the way back. Do you know what I mean? That's what's going to happen there. But live it up, enjoy it. Auf Wiedersehen, whatever they say in Germany, Guten Tag, all that type of stuff. I mean, it's incredible. I think it's a great achievement, and I think for the Tartan Army, it's fantastic, and like it brings that kind of passion to the football, doesn't it? The fans, it means the most to, and as Strange Love said, they're delighted for Scotland and supporters, players and staff. Well done, and that sums it up perfectly.
Yeah, I think so. It's about obviously me and Ross and we've been making noises definitely. I mean, I know Willie's he's definitely going. That's where his holidays are next year. But I mean, obviously Euro 2020 we were a little bit. We didn't have a great tournament, but obviously just the whole stadiums still weren't full and things like that, and the matches were getting played all over the continent and stuff. It was a bit of a crazy tournament. I think it'll be a bit more traditional this time. One host nation and. The Germans will put on some show, and I think, it'll just be a great couple of weeks, for however long, but maybe hopefully a bit longer than that, depending on how we feature. But definitely something to look forward to in the summer, and can only look forward to it. So, but that's the kind of Scotland chat over, Stephen. But just before we finish up, you came across. Sorry, on you go.
Anthony, I want to ask you a thing. I'm going to show the photo of this for the people watching and stuff, but what would be your ultimate five-a-side Scottish football team?
Ooh, have a goalkeeper?
You can do without a goalkeeper if you want.
Oh God! Well, I think goes Dennis Law, Kenny Dalglish straight in. God, so many. I mean. Probably for my generation, growing up, James McFadden was the kind of the talisman as well, and obviously with that great night
Kenny Dalglish,
France,
McFadden,
Dennis Loss. That's three midfielders, isn't so I'll take a we'll do the three in midfield, take a striker and a defender. So, oh God,
what about him?
McStay. Oh God, you got to have the maestro in there as well, don't you?
He's buckling.
That's a really tough one, mate. It's a real tough one. We've had some great kind of. I'd probably say Colin Hendry, but just for my generation, probably I'll maybe take Dennis Law and Dalglish out. I know they would get in most, but I'm just talking for my time on earth, as it were. The guys were before my time, so I'd probably say Colin Hendry at the back. He was a great centre half back in the day. Say McFadden. I would probably have
Scotland
to say
football team, San Fran, Scotland.
I would probably have to go with McCoist up front as well because listen, he always put the ball in the net. To be fair to him,
who have we got so far? Colin Hendry,
McCoist up front,
right?
And then I would say McFadden. Who else would I say? It's really, really tough.
Go with what you want to go with. Doesn't matter.
I'll say they three plus Law and Dalglish because they're probably the two greatest Scotland players of all time. But I could go all different ways, But we've had some decent teams over the years. Maybe just haven't had the rewards that were due,
100%. And even like naming them players are like what? I don't want to talk about McCoist, obviously, but like Dennis Law, Dalglish, all them types of players. Unbelievable. King Kenny for Celtic and all that. So, I mean, still highly regarded legend at the club. And I want to bring up this picture. I think it was John sent it in. Now, look, it's just a wee bit of a laugh to tie out the last 5 minutes here. I'm going to name a few players to you, Anthony, and just give me what you like about them or what memories you have of them, because this is a big list. I won't make it difficult on you, like, do you know what I mean? But you look at the top one, right? Top two, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. And I think that the worldwide debate is obviously who's the best, right? I know you watch United. I'm not going to say support them or not, but you watch United. Can you divide them two?
You can split them into different, but I think the debate's settled now, especially with the fact that Argentina won the World Cup. I mean, it didn't do it single. It wasn't quite Maradona 86. I would argue, but it wasn't far because it's. I don't think it's the most gifted Argentinian side. I don't even think they were necessarily that great to watch at the World Cup. But I think the fact that they knew they always had Messi on the park, and he came up trumps time and time again in that tournament. I think that's kind of settled that debate now. That was the one thing that he didn't have, and you know, he completed football by winning the World Cup. But listen, you know, we know not even just with Man United, but our family, or you know, my big sister especially, she's been over to Madrid a couple of times to watch, especially you know when Ronaldo was at his absolute peak over there. Amazing footballer. Of course, two completely different personalities, different attributes. But
different players.
Different players. I think, to be fair, I think they were perfect for each. You couldn't imagine a Messi at Madrid in the same way I couldn't imagine Ronaldo at Barcelona, if that makes sense. Listen, regardless, I mean, there's people that are very much one, and that's it. Like there's no debate for them. I think there is an argument. Obviously, the fact Ronaldo's done it in multiple different major leagues. I know Messi's, you know, he didn't really. PSG was a bit of a, you know, it wasn't really. You could tell his heart and soul wasn't in it. And I know obviously he's moved out to the MLS now, but you know,
great impact as well.
That's it, absolutely. But obviously Ronaldo done it. Portugal, England, and he came back to Spain. He went over to Italy, won some titles there as well. So there's arguments to be made, but I do think just with the fact that Messi obviously done the final PC's jigsaw in Qatar kind of settles that.
Yeah, what a five-a-side team there? Ronnie Simpson, Billy McNeil, Jinky Johnson, Bertie Auld, Douglas. Wow, and a team that will win everything there, like in a five-a-side tournament anyway.
I think boys, you know, that would be if the Masters tournament was still back then, you wouldn't even play the tournament.
But I think for me, like Messi, I always go by memories, and Messi brought me some cracking memories in the Champions League. Do you remember when I used to be on, obviously, STV in Scotland, like free to air, over here at UTV? And I used to remember going to my granddad's house and watching the All Champions League game and Celtic weren't involved, and it would always be Barcelona was drawn to. And Messi just, especially, remember the finals against United and things like that, and it was like Messi, Eto'o, and players of that nature, and just the way he manipulates the ball. He just takes players on, he just goes through them like a maze, and he just puts it in the back of the net. Some amazing goals. And I think over in America, MLS, I think it's like 12 goals and 11 starts for Inter Miami. Inter Miami were losing before he joined, neither winning every game. And I think that's a testament to the impact he can still have. And look, Ronaldo, to me, it's not lost on me. Up there, 100%, him and Messi are the best two players in my generation in world football. I always didn't like Ronaldo that much because he played for United. I have a really strong dislike for Manchester United. You all know that. But again, I'm not doubting that he's a fantastic player. Just a couple world-class players to say. Just a couple more players I want to throw at you. You mentioned them. Do you have much memories of Diego Maradona?
I've obviously got not like. I can kind of remember the '94 World Cup being on the telly when my brother would be watching it, but it was, you know, I was born in '88, so I'm still young at that time. Didn't really know, you know, you just knew the rules of the game. That was about it. But obviously, read his books, watched his documentaries. I mean, over my big brother, you know, that's for him. It's Diego. There's no other question about it. And he makes a strong case. He says, you know, when you look at what he did with Napoli, you know,
Napoli, yeah.
You know, he won them. You know, I think it was a title in a UEFA Cup, 2 UEFA Cups. I can't remember the exact. So he'd done it at that kind of club level. But obviously, everything he'd done in that '86 World Cup as well. Just a phenomenal player. You know, they always said that's maybe why the Argentines, he's still the god, even above Messi, just with his passion for his country as well. Not to say that Messi isn't. You know, we know Messi loves Argentina as well, but you know, I can remember watching one of the documentaries, and they joked that if he hadn't been a football player, he'd have been front line on the Falklands War. You know, he was just one of the types of players. But that goal, again, I know everyone always talk about the hand of God goal, but 2 minutes later he scored probably the greatest goal ever scored. But for many of the generation, maybe just a bit older than me, he'll be number one, undisputed. and probably with
Yeah.
good reason.
I think as well with Maradona, he was a character. Like, and I always remember seeing the when the Argentine national team trained at Celtic Park, the famous picture of him and the ball boy, and that he took time out for people. And regardless, I know he had his struggles and things, which is fair enough. But he looked like a humble human being. He came from Argentina, played with Napoli. I think he took them to Serie A titles and that single handedly. And like you said, he destroyed England, which everyone loves anybody who destroys England. And just finishing on a player. I'm just trying to find a player who's played in the flesh at Celtic Park here. Now, this is the list according to GDC Media, the best 100 players in history. We'll finish in this one. Not going for the obvious, people might think. And I think you've seen this fella in the flesh. I think we've argued against why we maybe shouldn't clap these people off the pitch. But I want you to tell me about him. Andreas Iniesta.
Oh, yeah. A couple of times.
What was he like to watch as a player?
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Him and Xavi were, obviously the double act at Barcelona for a long time. I'm just trying to think back. Don't think he would have played the year we beat them in 2004, but he definitely would have played in 2008 and then again in 2012, and then we played them again after that, didn't we? I think we played them in Brendan Rodgers' year as well. I think we played them a number of times. He just effortless. Everything about him, just the complete football and midfielder. As I say, he was alongside Xavi, that brilliant double act in the middle of the park. And I remember last year before the Champions League final, I think BT Sports were trying to do this, of the Champions League era, try to pick a midfield. And obviously, I think Iniesta got in and Xavi didn't, because I think they obviously had to find space for Zidane and, players like that. But it was kind of like you never really got one without the other. You think of Xavi and Iniesta, that was almost like Keane and Scholes, like that kind of way. Just with brilliant double acts. But so fortunate to see him a few times, Stephen, but just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal player.
Coin wizard, by all accounts, Iniesta is built like Graham Datt, the snooker player. Not your typical footballer, but was a genius, couldn't get the ball off him. I have no idea who Graham Datt is, but I take it it's a good comment, Coin wizard. But I mean, to be fair, again, that was just kind of the round it off, Anthony. And I do want to point out again the prize for Stephen Coulthard. It's on its way, which is a T-shirt, as you can see there, with the Endless Celts logo on it. And look, as I said to anybody, if they're interested, if there's enough interest, we'll do a wee bulk order and things like that. I'll have a bit of fun with it. But I'm sure in the future, they'll be giving out again as prizes and things like that to get involved with the Super Six. And by the way, when club football's back, this weekend? I've lost track. This weekend, yes. Make sure you get involved with the Super Six and things like that. But Anthony, back over to you, big man. To round it off, have you enjoyed it?
Absolutely, mate. It's great, and absolutely hats off to you by the way tonight, because obviously I knew it was it's the international break, which I know you're a big fan of, but we've managed to get an hour's chat about Scotland qualifying, and I know we'll be right back to your favourite subject on Friday night, because it's obviously return
Champions League football.
Return of the club action at the weekend, and obviously massive game at Tynecastle this weekend. So I'm not sure who's on Friday, but it'll be a great show. I'm absolutely sure about that. And I'll always like to hand over to you to do the famous farewell. But thanks again to everybody for tuning in. Stephen, your T-shirt will be with you soon, and we'll catch up with you again soon. Thanks again.
As Anthony says, stay well, keep safe. We'll see you on Friday. Hail, hail.